Hello, friends. Welcome back to the Brave Writer podcast. Today, it's just me, Julie. Melissa is off, and I'm looking forward to talking to you about our topic, tech in education. But first, I just want to say thank you. For some reason, there's been an uptick in the number of reviews and love that you're showing the podcast and messages sent to me on Instagram. I love it when this becomes a two-way conversation because otherwise I'm just staring at this screen and the rainy day out my window, and it's nice to make contact with those of you who are listening. It also means the world to both of us when you share the podcast with other people because it's on that basis that we can keep this podcast going. Let me just add one more thing. If you're a person who owns a business and would like to advertise with us, please reach out to us at help@bravewriter.com. I would love to talk to you. One of the things that is so cool for us in this homeschool space is that we can help connect each other with resources that help our homeschools really hum along. So thanks for that. Thanks for listening. And let's get right into today's topic. Most of you probably know that I have a Substack, and it is called Brave Learning with Julie Bogart. And each week, we send you an article, a free writing prompt, and a Monday morning meeting podcast that is 5 minutes long for your kids. And I would love you to take advantage of that wonderful space. Every now and then, I write an article that has more to do with a current experience that I'm having in the homeschool space or something I want you to think about as a parent. And that happened last week. And I wrote an essay that got quite a bit of reaction. And so I wanted to share it with you today and then give you some follow-up thoughts. So I'm going to read that article to you, and then I'll share some of the thoughts I have based on the comments I've received, because I think this is a really important conversation. The title is My Honest Thoughts About Tech in Schooling and What I Wish for Today's Homeschool Parents. Back in the early days of homeschooling, the zeitgeist of what it meant to bring education home went something like this. Choose what your children learn because you know best. Bake bread from scratch because you're home and you can. Be your child's mentor by allowing them to shadow all the skills you have, whether gardening or wallpapering or building a bird feeder or knitting or even learning Excel. Stay home as much as you can so that your children have leisurely days with each other and you, schooling in the mornings and playing in the afternoons. Make learning cozy and natural. Volunteer. Participate in your family's cultural heritage or faith if you had one. Add in out-of-the-house classes for art, music, playdates, dance, and/or sports. Go to places where learning happens naturally, museums, theater, movies, nature centers, forests and beaches, botanical gardens, zoos, aquariums, and observatories. Read, read, read to your children. Enjoy each other's company. Honestly, despite there being hard days where kids woke up with the flu or someone cried over how hard the phonics lesson felt, these goals were achievable and common. 2 new trends. Today, that model is being challenged by 2 new trends. One trend is group schooling. Instead of homeschooling alone at home, lots of parents are putting their kids into groups in homeschool class programs of some kind, whether micro schools, hybrid schools, or co-ops. The second trend is online schooling. Big and little tech are on the move. They're creating slick platforms where kids log in to follow pre-recorded content or live classes to learn. Some of these platforms are all-encompassing. They require hours online each day. Others act as supplementary, an hour a day for one subject or a semester of one class to supplement the rest of the homeschool program. I want to talk about the second trend in this podcast, the good old days. Listen, it's tempting to have a reaction like, in the good old days, we did it better. I really hate that. I am a technological optimist. I've always believed that the problems technology creates, technology can solve. I have lived with that perspective for 45 years. I like to be forward-thinking. Today, I'm rethinking some stuff. Back in 1999, I was the first person I know in the homeschooling space to offer an online class. I conducted it over email. Parents were eager to connect with a professional writer who could help them effectively teach writing to their struggling students. I wasn't interested in direct-to-student teaching because I knew that the real transformation came when a parent understood how to support their young writers. If the parents offloaded their kids to me and the kids improved in writing by finding a new groove, but went back to parents who still held the same misguided school-style expectations, those kids had no hope of retaining the transformational practices I had taught them. I know that was a really long sentence, and I had to record it twice, but it's worth thinking about. It felt clear to me then, the parent is the leader of the child's education. My role was to help those parents carry out their job more effectively, with more compassion for the individual student. Brave Writer's entire online writing class program is built from this premise: short bursts of writing instruction that start by teaching the parents and kids together. The idea of teaching the parent the skills in order to be effective is rare today. Parents often don't want to learn, and they worry they can't do it, or they prefer to hire someone who can. I developed an entire membership site around the idea that parents, as career educators, would want to keep their skills sharp to have wonderful homeschool experiences with their kids. Lots of those parents say they don't have time to keep up with those trainings, and I keep wondering why. What's changed? Today, many parents tell me that their goal is to have the fruit of homeschooling. They love the promises of delight-led learning, kids going at their own pace, opting out of public school dysfunction and peer bullying. But they don't have time to actually do it. They are overwhelmed by options and feel pressure to demonstrate their children's academic growth. Many want an all-inclusive program online. Homeschooling without the hard work of creating it yourself. It's like going on a Danube river cruise instead of backpacking through Europe. I understand this feeling. Homeschooling as the primary teacher takes dedication and effort. It feels scary to do it alone. Online platforms design the education. Your job is simply to ensure your kids follow through on their lessons. Rather than being a home educator, a lot of parents today are opting to be homeschool managers. Tech solutions address pain points like these. I want my child to work independently. I want my child on a computer doing work I didn't have to think of or plan. I want a computer to collect the data that tells me my child is completing their lessons. I want to create a flexible schedule for those classes. I want an all-in-one program with a monthly fee. I want classes that my kid finds interesting that I didn't create or build. I want to know that my kids are getting the right education. I want to be able to work during the day while my child is doing their lessons. I want to cover all the subjects, even ones I won't think of, like geology. I want the right levels taught for each child. Online schools are popping up like daisies in the snow everywhere. Their appeal is strong. But here are my honest feelings. I feel sad. I feel sad that parents are trading in the joyful shared learning adventure of homeschooling for an online one-child, one-screen experience. It's not that I think online learning should go away. Selecting a class or two as a turbo boost for your homeschool is delightful. Kids love being in a space designed for them with new enthusiastic teachers who offer fresh ways to learn or engage subject areas. It's the programs that take over the entire homeschool day that I find troubling. Do we want our kids online for several hours a day, associating the act of learning with logging onto a screen and working through digital tests or PowerPoint slides? Parents are generally worried about screen time, video games, social media, texting apps, cell phones with internet access. Yet many seem fine with online classrooms, where a child may spend hours on a computer in a single day. Part of what I love about the original vision of homeschooling is that there is free time. Time to explore, learn, daydream, work at a project for a sustained, undetermined amount of time. There's space to think, feel, partner, separate, write, reflect, create, and read. The home becomes a place where learning is a living, breathing activity, not a set of skills that can only be accessed through a login and password before being mastered. When we put kids on a computer to learn, they may associate learning with lessons given to them by a machine, rather than seeing learning as their natural state that thrives in relationship to other human beings and the world around them. Homeschooling in its purest form has been about learning as a lifestyle, something that goes on everywhere, all at once, all the time. Our kids don't need to fear the online world, but we also don't want them to associate it with the primary place where learning occurs. Learning happens, after all, in a kitchen, a horse stable, a basement, a backyard, a creek, an art studio, on a hiking trail. It happens at the kitchen table, yes, and it happens on a computer, sure, but it also happens in a reading nook or treehouse. It happens at Starbucks in a freewheeling conversation with a parent about a recently read novel. It happens upstairs, lying on a bed with a physical book. It happens while solving a 1,000-piece puzzle, listening to an audiobook. It happens all the time. Learning in homeschool is first and foremost about the bold notion that learning is not contained by a building or a laptop. Learning happens inside a self, connected to a subject, in partnership with a living, breathing person. Sometimes that person might be online, but no matter what, the learning is not about chugging through a series of slides and answering quiz questions. If that is the way the system is set up, we may as well put our kids in school so at least they're working with three-dimensional people for most of their waking hours. Here's what I wish today's parents knew. Homeschooling sounds hard when we think of it as an alternative to public school. We worry about state standards and the traditional classroom activities that we associate with learning. Many of us were raised in school, so we think learning happens in a building, in a classroom. Homeschooling is natural and, dare I say, easy when we think about learning as a lifestyle. The great opportunity of home education is not managing a learning system on behalf of some other entity. Think of supervising homework for school as the corollary to supervising online school for lessons completed. The joy is in going on the adventure of learning together with your kids. Homeschooling not only educates your children, it changes the entire culture of your family. Learning, living, and loving are united. Family dinners can become rollicking conversations about history or literature. A child's obsession with astronomy means everyone gets up to see Saturn through a telescope at 4 a.m. Another child's fascination with archery leads to reading the Hunger Games series aloud. When a parent teaches writing at home, the writing is read by an interested reader. You! In fact, you're the reader your child cares the most about. Your kids want your reactions. They want to be read and valued by the person they value the most. Today, some programs use AI agents to teach writing. That means the writing your child does is not being read by a person. What is the point of writing or learning to write if the writing never gets read by a person? Homeschooling is not so difficult if you partner with your kids in learning together. You create a simple daily routine. You follow inspiration when it visits. You get out of the house and into the big, beautiful world regularly. You learn as a family for as many of the subjects as is practical. You let go of grades and assessments. You focus on each child's individual progress. You select curriculum that suits your family culture and interests. If you want to toss in an online class for variety, wonderful. But I secretly hope you won't delegate your entire homeschool to an all-day online program. You'll miss the fun and magic of that shared learning experience. I want that for you. I really do. Thanks for listening to that article from my Substack. I want to talk about it with you a little bit now, though, because I've had a lot of feedback on that article, and I think it would be helpful to discuss it in a little more depth. First of all, one of the trends I've been seeing online lately is the repudiation of the idea of homeschooling being magical. I saw someone one time create an Instagram post that said, "Where are all my mothers who love workbooks?" And then all these people are like, "I do, I do, I do." As though in this vision of homeschooling, no one ever fills out a workbook. They absolutely do. They absolutely do. I saw another mother talk about how the pressure to be magical felt like a daily grind, and her kids were silly and ignoring her wonderful ideas and were kicking their feet under the table. And she said, "I'm tired from all of this. I just want to do school and be done each day." And then all these parents chimed in, "Yep, that's what I'm experiencing as well." So I want to talk about that for a moment. First of all, I think there is a danger in the language of magic, but I used that word deliberately because, like all of you, most of us start homeschooling with a school at home model. It's the only thing we know. And when our kids get reactive and whine and complain, we're looking for solutions to their resistance. It's not so much that it's about the learning at that point. It's about the daily experience of our family life. And nobody wants to live in a home with a bunch of whining, complaining people, whether it's the parent nagging the children to do their schoolwork or the kids resisting and whining. Both of those experiences we do not want. So if we say something along the lines of, "These ideas for creating a natural and magical life aren't working for me, I'm just going to double down on the grind," what we're really saying is, I've given up problem solving all of the displeasure that is happening in my family. And what I advocate for, what I am hoping to instill in parents, is optimism that it's possible to have pleasure when you learn. But to achieve that pleasure, we have to make some changes. And I think what happens with tech is it offers this sort of quasi-solution. Okay, now it's not on me to solve this problem of my child not liking learning. I can be the third party. I can be triangled in as the referee, as the enforcer, as the facilitator, rather than the person who is responsible for engineering an experience that my child will like. I don't have to feel the daily failure of not living up to my child's expectations. We can just finger point at the program and I can enrich their lives in other ways. And by the way, some kids love these AI online programs. Let me be clear. I am not trying to say that your child should do a program they don't like, or they should give up a program they do like. What we're trying to do is problem solve for what is learning. And I think I have some thoughts. Over the last week, one of the things that has become clear to me when I've been speaking with teachers at a micro school, parents in the Brave Writer community, and families who reach out to me on social media, here's what's becoming clear. The pressure to meet standards undermines everything. There is this understandable notion that our job is to produce kids who live up to the success metrics of the local school system. We have this notion that we're going to create magic in learning, all while carefully accommodating the set of criteria someone else has set up for us in that learning experience. What instantly happens is your kids feel measured. They know they're being measured. And the moment they feel that pressure, many of them collapse. Now, some will perform. They will perform because they like earning your pleasure through accommodating that metric. But a lot of kids, faced with the potential of disappointing you, pretend to hate learning. They pretend they don't like learning because they don't want to risk failure in your eyes and disappointing you. The chief goal of every child is to bring their parents happiness. That is their goal. And they do it by being squirrely and telling poopy jokes. They do it by bringing you a creation from the backyard, by painting you a picture that doesn't look like anything recognizable, by hugging you when you least expect it or want it. Children want their parents to approve of them. You know how I know? Because people in their 60s, my peer group, still want their parents' approval. It never goes away. So when your child is throwing up resistance, it is because the thing that they're being asked to do is not something they want to do. And if they risk doing something they don't want to do, they may fail to live up to the imagined outcome that will make you happy. So they'd rather resist and say things like, my hand hurts, than I'm worried if I write what I'm really thinking, you won't like it. No kid will articulate that, but that is often what's going on. You know, when I wrote Help, My Kid Hates Writing, I wondered if people who were familiar with my work would feel like it was too familiar, that perhaps it wouldn't have the same impact as it would for people who didn't know anything about Brave Writer. But what I found out by reading the reviews is that even Brave Writer fans, even parents with kids who love writing, found new strategies and ideas within my book to help them be successful writing coaches. Here are some of the feedback that I've received, some of the reviews that I wanted to share with you. One reviewer said, another gem of a book by Julie. She always feels like an ally, not only for the home educators, but for the kiddos. This book has solid strategies to help soften the writing experience for kids with the guidance of parents who themselves may need a mental makeover in what writing even is or can be. Another reviewer said to me, I can't say enough about how wonderful this book is. It's well written, which is good for this type of book, but it's also so useful. It makes it fun to write. And then maybe my favorite review said this book was heartfelt, insightful, actionable, and exactly what we needed. Julie challenges you to think in new ways and encourages you to be the guide your child needs on their language arts journey. Honestly, that was the motivation to write this book. I want you to feel that you can give your children the soft landing pad they deserve as they flex their wings of self-expression. I show you how, I give you great tips and strategies and lots of narrative examples. Check out my new book, Help, My Kid Hates Writing. Go to juliebogartwriter.com or any place books are sold. So when we're in this moment where we're like, life is hard, I can't get everything done, my child is resisting all my magic I've created, we're just going to chug through. We're going to find a technology program. We're going to find some kind of textbook or workbook program, and I'm just going to enforce it, and we're just going to get things done. There's a certain relief in that because what you're saying is the system will save us. It's much easier to lean on a system than your own ingenuity and creativity. We all know that. We're all looking for systems to solve the problems of modern life every day of our lives. So here's the vision I want to cast that's different. What would happen if we let go of the school criteria and the memory of grades and performance, and for, let's just say 2 months, maybe these months going into the end of the year holiday break, what if for these 2 months we focused on what our kids find interesting? Not interesting on your cell phone. I'm not talking about that, but just literally interesting. Now, initially, they may go through what we call in the business deschooling, where they wander like aimless nomads in your house because they're not used to having time to just be interested in something. You, of course, can lead the way by being interested in something and doing that smack dab on the kitchen table in front of them without inviting their participation. That often helps. You know, get some modeling clay and you just sit down one morning after breakfast and start making things with clay. I can't think of a single child on the planet who won't want to get in on that action at some point. Where could that lead? Could it lead to making various kinds of vessels for eating and thinking about different cultures and the different kinds of vessels they use for eating? Could it lead to making a little house for tiny fairy people? Could it lead to simply the texture and exploration of using your fingers in this dexterous way that makes it easier at some point to physically handwrite because you're building up the muscle strength in the fingers. All of the things that we're interested in touch on every subject under the planet. Everything can teach anything, and anything can teach everything. The problem for most of us is that we think the abstract goals of education in the traditional school model are superior to the practical application of those skills in real life. We think it is better to know your times tables to get an A on that test than to actually use your times tables in baking, quilting, or carpentry. We think it's better to write a 5-paragraph essay about the Civil War than to actually make foods from that era, visit Civil War sites, read narrative fiction about people who lived through that time period. There is a little secret part of us that believes true education is abstract and measurable, but it's not. I was talking with a group of educators last night, and we were talking about the performance metric that is assigned to writing in most classrooms. And it was occurring to me while I was talking to them that it's scary to let go of that metric because parents expect it, because how will a teacher know a student is making progress? One of the things I said is the metric exists for adults. There isn't a child on the planet who actually thinks being measured is a great way to live. Oh, we indoctrinate them into that. I became a straight A student because I was told getting A's mattered. And then I spent most of my life feeling like a fraud because I could get an A on a test and forget everything I learned 3 weeks later. Performance metrics are for adults, not for children. The key advantage that you have to living with your children all day, every day, if you homeschool them, is you are observing their growth and development, and you can participate in it. So you have a child who's struggling with phonics. What good is a B? Doesn't do anything, doesn't motivate them, doesn't tell you anything. What you have is a child who is still trying to learn phonics. So you're going to be creative and do research and find ways to unlock what feels currently locked, because that's what a devoted parent does. Will it always look magical? No. But guess what? When that key unlocks phonics, the magic is palpable. It is worthy of celebration. It's not, oh, good, we got through that. Now you can read. Let's push you to the next thing. One of the metaphors I use in The Brave Learner about this experiential learning is this. It's like beads or pearls strung on a necklace. The necklace is your daily routine. You're going to show up and do your practical routine every day. And some days it'll be boring because life is boring, right? Most of life is not a high or a low. It's just putting in the paces of living together. But there will be these moments because of that routine and because of this optimism about learning and because you have set aside the metric as the goal where suddenly something magical can happen because the space exists for it. Suddenly, your child has written the screenplay opening scene of Gilgamesh in their bedroom and you didn't know it was happening. A pearl goes on that string. One day, your child is sitting and reciting the times tables to their 3-year-old sibling, and your 3-year-old suddenly knows them. Another pearl on a string. One day, you're not feeling well. Your stomach hurts, maybe you're pregnant and you're going through a little bit of morning sickness, and one of your children offers to set up an entire poetry tea time without your help. Another pearl on a string. These magical moments happen because we create space for non-performance oriented learning. Do we want our kids to learn to read? Yes. Do we want them to be able to calculate? Yes. Should they have a working knowledge of U.S. history or world history? Sure. Is it important that they hear literature read to them or that they read books themselves? Of course, all of those can be done without grades, without metrics. They come from a living relationship. And what I worry about with these alpha schools where AI is teaching the basic skills and they cost $40,000 a year and the teachers are not teachers, they're education managers. What I worry about is that we start to associate learning not only with an outcome, but with a technology, as opposed to its purpose in navigating life on the planet. You know, imagine if your entire experience of learning about food was through recipe analysis in an online PowerPoint slide program. Imagine that. Is that the same as being in a kitchen and cooking? It's not. And yet you could memorize that you need 3 cups of flour measured to put into this cookie recipe. You could memorize that and get that right on a test. Would that say that you knew how to make these cookies? Does it help you understand the role of humidity or altitude where you live in the baking project? Not really. So much of schooling is about mastering abstract ideas and principles and concepts with the hope that when you're in your adult field, you'll finally do something practical with them. Homeschooling is about the idea that you can do those practical things now, that as you are learning the skills, you are pairing them with an immediate application. William Rhinesmith, an education reformer, often says that real learning connotes use. If something you've learned isn't going to be used, it will not be retained. Your kids are at the peak of their lives where application comes through hands and bodies, not through abstract ideas. We save that for our 30s and 40s, maybe our 20s. But 0 through about 20, get those kids using their bodies, their hands, their environment, tools they can touch. And homeschooling is the daring idea that a parent is good enough to pull that off. Are we preparing them to enter school someday? Sure. Will some of them be behind because they haven't been following the school metrics the whole time? Yeah. So? So what? Is school the determining factor of everybody's outcome in life? Let me tell you this. The number of homeschooled adults I know who ended up in careers they built from scratch for themselves is wild. It is a big number. Because they have learned early on that they want to do things that matter to them. They go on weird, wild adventures. My own daughter traveled South America and Asia for 2 years as a solo traveler before she decided on her career. Why was she brave enough to do that? She went to learn Spanish in Ecuador. Why? Kids who know that you learn best through immersion and experience will not be satisfied with Duolingo. They're going to go to Ecuador. This is your opportunity. Am I against hybrid schools, micro schools, co-ops? No, absolutely not. Am I even against public schools? No. But in the hours your children are with you, can you be the reprieve from metric-based education? Can you please give your kids the opportunity to experience learning for its own sake? And here's the honest truth. It feels awkward and unnatural. You're going to see so much wasted time. You're going to be like, okay, so all they did today was set up dominoes to see if they could knock them over. That counts? Yeah, honey, it does. It counts. I saw my child laying on the couch, rolling around, playing with the dog. That's all they did for an hour. Yep, that counts. My daughter spent an hour in her bedroom rearranging the books on her shelf to make them look like a rainbow. Is that learning? You betcha. You just don't know what they're learning. You don't know what that means to them. Should they be on their phones or computers or iPads all day? Of course not. Just like you know better. But does that mean that all learning happens offline? Also, no. You get to decide with your children. I remember when we had a video camera back in the day of video cameras as opposed to cell phones. That was a huge treat for my kids to get to use the video camera. Remember, we have this hill in our front yard, and we had just watched The Lord of the Rings, like one of the, trilogy. And my son Jacob got this idea that he wanted to have like the teeming horde come up over the mountain the way that they do inside of Lord of the Rings. And so he got our video camera and he got a bunch of his friends and they did this like rise up over the hill and suddenly appeared on the screen. Is he using that information today in his career? No. Was it a worthwhile thing to do? Absolutely. Why did we let him have time for that instead of doing science or math that day? Because for Jacob, he saw something interesting. He wanted to experience how it could be achieved. That's learning. There is no school metric for that. There's nothing that school is going to say, I can give that an A or 100% or a good check plus. That is literally the freedom of time to experiment, explore, and create internal understanding. And we don't know what it will mean. We don't have to know. We don't have to know. If your kids are meaningfully engaged in something they value, they are learning. I'll say that again. If your kids are meaningfully engaged in something they're doing, they are learning. Whether it's throwing a lacrosse ball, baking cookies, petting the dog, rolling around on the floor, tickling the toddler, or doing math facts, they're learning. Our job with, the 3 R's, reading, writing, and arithmetic, is to provide them with as many opportunities as possible to make those experiences meaningful enough that they can use them when they need them. They are not in isolation from life. I say this a lot. Immerse in this learning environment, chase what's interesting, and lay a feast of learning opportunities in front of your kids. Yes, you can use workbooks to teach math and then play Yahtzee. Yes, you can use workbooks to teach phonics, then read books. Yes, you can use a handwriting book to learn how to handwrite and then do free writing so they can experience why they're learning handwriting. This is the way it works. It's a toggling between skill development, which doesn't need to be measured with a grade, just growth, just watching and learning and moving it forward, with the application in a way that the child values it. If you do those two things, toggling back and forth without worrying about school, your kids will learn. And you'll have a different kind of homeschool. It will start to feel like the one you imagined when you signed up. Will it feel great every day? No, but neither does life. Neither does parenting. Whenever things are hard, I always say you need a reset. And in our family, it was poetry tea time. It was the automatic reset. You might have a different one. It might be kicking a soccer ball in the backyard. It might be going for a long walk in nature. Find something that helps reset the experience of your family when things get stiff or cagey or whiny. And mostly, enjoy the opportunity to be with these beautiful kids that you've either adopted or created out of your own body, and give them the opportunity to become people who learn. Thanks for joining me today. I know this is a sensitive topic, and some of you are using online school or hybrid schools or micro schools for very reasonable reasons, right? Both you and your spouse work, or you just don't feel up to teaching, or you like the opportunity for your child to be instructed by a different person or be in a community of friends. All of those are good reasons. I am not telling you to change how you homeschool. But what I am asking you to think about is in those hours of the day when you are with your children, whether it's full-time or just after school, can we lean into learning as pleasurable and personal, as opposed to simply about meeting a metric and a criteria set for you by other people? Can we start to help our kids experience the joy of being a learner, not just a student? That is my main plea, and it's the thing that I will continue to advocate for in this podcast, as will Melissa. We're so grateful that you listen along. If you'd like to subscribe to my Substack, you can go to the link in our show notes, and those messages will be sent to you through email. So you don't even have to keep up through an app, which is nice. Our text messaging system and our helpline email address are also in the show notes. That's another way to reach out to us. Or you can simply post a comment or a direct message on Instagram. Thanks for being here today, and I look forward to rejoining you with Melissa next time on the Brave Writer Podcast. Okay, that's another Brave Writer episode in the books. Thanks for joining Melissa and me today. We love it when you leave us reviews, when you send us comments via text message. We read them all. We also couldn't do this show without our fabulous production team at Nova, or Jeanette Hall, the Brave Writer team member who handles all those administrative details you know nothing about. In the meantime, we hope that you have a fantastic week. Keep going, think well. We're rooting for you.